Well, art history, I would say, is a response to Silver Bullets taking so long. So after that much time with only one film in my head, sort of like as an obsession, and also it like coincided with a time that was like financially really tough for me. So on Silver Bullets, we probably only shot for a total of 20 days or something like that, but spread out over 2.5 years, because I just couldn't afford to get everybody together very often, so we were only shooting a few times a year. But I wasn't working on other things, so it was really stressful to sort of like have months go by where I was just in my apartment, like sending emails and doing things all day, you know, like not making work, which is what I want to be doing. So once I made Uncle Kent, it immediately sort of like opened up the floodgates in a way for all these other projects and ideas. And we also made it so quickly that I was really encouraged to try that again. So art history sort of came out of breaking free from Silver Bullets a little bit, and also feeling like I was far enough along on Silver Bullets that I finally had my head wrapped around it, so that I could go make another film without compromising the first one. So in the process of then making all these other films, I finished Silver Bullets too. You know, I mean, I brought the actors to Chicago to finish it, and then while all the actors were in Chicago, we also made another film together. You know, so I wasn't. I was just motivated to work quickly, you know, or to sort of catch up with the ideas that were still kind of hanging around. I would say that not having money is pretty liberating in a sense, because you're freed from the obligation to make commercial movies. But I know that in a way that's not a very helpful thing to say, because filmmakers who are just starting out want to be recognized. They want to make commercial movies, at least in the sense that they want the films to draw attention to themselves and sort of announce them as new directors that people are interested in. So you know, it's like a hard prospect to suggest to somebody like, why don't you know, like right now you're free enough to make 10 movies that nobody ever sees, which to me seems like freedom, but to a lot of people is of course terrible. They want an audience as soon as possible to be interested in their work. So you know, I mean, I would just recommend to people to like use the cheapness of the technology and to use the openness of the internet and things like that to make as much work as possible before they get into a situation where they have to make money from their work, which I think eventually everybody has to find that situation where they at least are making enough money to survive. But I'm like constantly really surprised by how similar all movies are. You know, like it's an art form that has just as much freedom as any other, and almost everybody works in exactly the same way, which is really strange. Like write a script, raise the money, cast the actors, hire an AD, have call times for different locations, shoot the movie, do post-production, do color correction, do sound. Like everybody goes through the same steps. It's really crazy to me that there are very few people varying from that format of how to make a movie. So I would also encourage people to take the technology and be sort of like be primitive with it, like pretend like you've never seen a movie before and try and figure out a new way to make a movie and see what works or doesn't work. Well, I mean, in a way, I'm through that creative crisis, and now I'm in a creative crisis where I keep making movies about filmmaking, which I think is its own separate trap that I found myself in, where my idea is to always like step back a level and make some sort of meta filmmaking project. So you know, I'm not depressed anymore, definitely, which I was at the time. But I'm still frustrated that I'm not smarter than I am. or more talented than I am. You know, I mean, I would like to be making movies that are way more ambitious and way more crazy than the ones that I'm currently making. So, you know, I'm trying. I mean, I at least that's a goal to strive for. But, you know, I mean, I feel like I'll sort of go through really productive periods, and then probably I'll hit these same sort of walls again, where for one reason or another it's hard to finish a particular movie, or hard to do the idea that I have in the way that I want to do it. But I'm enjoying the period right now where I've found it relatively easy to jump from project to project.
I feel like the way that I was trained to be an actor is sort of intuitive, naturally. I mean, I went to the Strasberg studio, and I was trained in like sense memory and the method and all of that. But I use it certainly, but I think that probably most of Joe's actors, without knowing it, are doing something similar to method acting, I think. So, I mean, I didn't consciously think about my acting training while I was working on the movie. So, I didn't really start out by building a character because it was so improvised, you know, entirely improvised. You just sort of, I mean, Josephine talks about it in art history, that what comes most naturally to you and what's easiest to improvise with is, you know, things from your own life.
Well, you know, I guess I don't have any acting training, which I think sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful.
Because just wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking about, I mean, I think, you know, when you're in a scene, most of the time I'm just trying to be myself, be perfectly natural. And I've worked in documentaries mostly as a director, which is you're constantly trying to make people feel at ease and feel like the camera isn't even present. And so, because I'm so used to trying to get people to feel like there's no camera present, like, it was easier for me to put myself in the position like, that's not even here, you know, like I'm just hanging out with my friends. So that was nice. And in a way, I guess that's probably method acting, like just being in a situation and not like fully committed to whatever's happening. I don't know anything about method acting, so.
I think it's just the best kind of acting, just being present and responding to the stimulus that's available to you. So I feel like we both probably approached it in pretty similar ways, even though we come from different backgrounds.
Right, yeah. And Joe was really good at, like, because we worked on, Uncle Kent was actually the first film that we worked on together, and that was really my first experience acting acting. So, and he was really like, oh, you know, just be yourself and don't be scared of, because I was worried that it wasn't going to be good enough or that I wouldn't, you know, be able to do it. And he was like, no, just be yourself and it'll be fine. And that worked out. And I think because we developed a lot of comfort on Uncle Kent, and there were, like, I was mostly in a sex scene in that movie, art history, it was very easy to, like, feel comfortable being in sex scenes and being naked around, because we'd all become friends. And also because the sets are very small, it's so much easier to be natural, because you're only dealing with sort of the setup like we have here. You know, it's like one camera person, maybe a sound person, and mostly it's friends, so it's not intimidating. You don't feel like there's somebody looming over you waiting for you to fail or something. So.
I've drawn a lot from, I mean, you're always drawing a lot from your own life, but you're actually potentially drawing personal details from your own life. And I've also done a lot of scripted work where you find out information about the character in the script, and then you work on that and you build something from that. But I think ultimately you do all this work for a character, and then the point, like, acting on film is, I think, really hard, and I think ultimately all the work you've done you just abandon and hope that some of it has stuck. But being natural in front of a camera is, I think, incredibly difficult. And so
you know, the It's actually, now that you asked that, I'm like surprised how little I thought about those things. I was really curious about Joe's process and about the way that he was filming and the cameras he was using and the edits and the sound equipment, mostly as a learning tool, like as a learning experience, because I was like, oh, you know, it's such an exciting way that he makes movies, and it's so different from the way that many people make movies. But I didn't think about directing at all. I wasn't even necessarily thinking about the arc of the scenes, even though I knew them and I knew that we had an outline. I think I was more focused on being true to what I felt like my character, how she would respond to the situation at hand, which was very close to how I would respond to the situation at hand. Mm-hmm. So I guess I was more focused on acting. I feel like the work, because it's very personal and it's coming from our own experience, the issues that I would have with things that came up, or when I would feel overwhelmed or very vulnerable or scared, I was really about having conversations, often just with myself, about, okay, why are you doing this? Why are you interested in this? What's exciting about this to you? So that those like feelings of fear, or, you know, wow, this is, you know, I had not done that kind of thing before. How is this going to affect my life? But I was so excited by the project, and I felt like it was exploring vulnerability and power in a very deep and incisive way. So I think the more that I was like, you're doing this for a reason, and you're excited by it, and being present and being in the company of like great collaborators, it felt like it made it easier. And also, Joe and I had tons of conversations before, during, and after the movie about things that I was comfortable with, things that I wasn't comfortable with, things that I was afraid of, things that he was afraid of, and even afterwards, things that I was afraid of that we'd shot and we talked about for a long time. And so he was really good at being present and being available to talk through, like, you know, his motivations for wanting to include certain scenes, and hearing me out, and some things that we talked about beforehand. When we got on set, we were like, you know what, let's not do that, because that's probably pushing it too far. So yeah, he was very respectful of boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's incredibly respectful of boundaries. But I understand where the question is coming from completely, because I feel like that is a danger, because movie making is exciting. So not only are you acting as though you're in love with someone or attracted to them or hoping that you'll start a relationship with them, but you're also, as two people who are acting in a movie or working on a movie together, you're engaged in something that's out of the ordinary and exciting. It's what you want to be doing, presumably, you know, so it's outside of your regular life. But personally, for me, on Silver Bullets, it was not a problem. It felt really comfortable, and I think that Joe and I are friends in real life, you know, so it was just an extension of a friendship, you know. The intimacy was not confusing or you know, dangerous.
Well, I wish I could see myself as an actress. I definitely have a long way to go. I mean, unfortunately, most people don't make movies the way that Joe makes movies, and you can't just show up and improvise and be yourself. You have to memorize lines. That is not something I'm good at yet. But I loved acting. I mean, I loved it. I think directing often, and producing, and you know, I work on documentaries and music videos and stuff where you're constantly, you're really in your head a lot of the time, and you're not present and fully inside of your body and your physicality. Whereas acting, especially this kind of movie, is the opposite. You're completely focused and in one instant. So it was completely liberating and exciting, and I would love to do a lot more of it. Hopefully I'll find outlets for that. But I definitely will probably mostly continue to be a director. Mm-hmm.